Hi, Miss S here. Today we're going to learn the sounds that letters make. My puzzle is empty. Let's fill it up with the letters and learn the sounds at the same time. A. A says ah. A says ah. A says ah, 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 ah. And sometimes A says A, like angel. B. B says b. B says b. B says b, 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 like bird. C. C says k. C says k. C says k, 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 like cat. D. D says d. D says d. D says d, 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 like duck. E. E says eh. E says eh. E says eh, 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 eh. And sometimes E says E, like in the word ear. F. F says f. F says f. F says f, 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 like the word frog. G. G says g. G says g. G says g, 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 like in the word goat. H. H says h. H says h. H says h, 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 like in the word hat. I. I says I. I says I. I says I, 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 I. I also says I, like in the word iron. J. J says j. J says j. J says j, 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 like in the word jam. K. K says k. K says k. K says k, 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 like in the word kite. L. L says l. L says l. L says l, like the word lion. M. M says M says M says like in the word milk. N. N says N. N says N says like in the word nest. O says ah. O says ah. O says ah, 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 ah. And sometimes O says O, like in the word oval. P. P says p. P says p. P says p, 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 like in the word pot. Q. Q says qu. Q says qu. Q says qu, 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 like in the word quilt. R. R says r. R says r. R says r, like in the word radio. S. S says S says S says like in the word sun. T. T says t. T says t. T says t, 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 like in the word train. U. U says U says U says and sometimes U says you. U says in the word uncle. V. V says v. V says v. V says v, 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 like in the word van. W. W says w. W says w. W says w, like in the word wagon. X. X says x. X says x. X says x, 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 like in the word X-ray. Y. Y says y. Y says y. Y says y, 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 like in the word yarn. And Z. Z says z. Z says z. Z says z, 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 like in the word zebra. We did it! We completed my puzzle. Let's say the alphabet together and say the sounds that each letter makes. A. A says a and sometimes a. B says b. C says k. D says d. E says e and sometimes e. F says f. G says g. H says h. I says I and sometimes I. J says j. K says k. L says l. M says N says n. O says ah and sometimes o. P says p. Q says qu. R says r. S says s. T says t. U says and sometimes u. V says v. W says w. X says x. Y says y. And Z says z. We did it! Great job, everybody. See you next time.